Thank you. Thank you, Carlotta. And welcome to our annual spring review. Let's adjust the mic a little bit here. So, of course, we had to be a little bit flexible because of the problems with the weather. And I thank everybody for being flexible and fitting in with our schedule. So we're going to try to compress the schedule a little bit so that we're not very, very late. But we're going to try and keep to all of the talks that we have scheduled. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Air Force Office of Scientific Research. And then we'll continue on from there with other briefings, including strategy briefings and international overviews. And then we'll start with our technical directorates. So, okay. So the clicker doesn't work. So you're going to have to... Okay, so the mission of the Air Force Office of Scientific Research is to really find the best research and shape those cutting-edge areas of science and technology that are really most relevant to the Air Force, and then to try to take those things and make sure that those within the Air Force Research Laboratory and the rest of the Air Force and Department of Defense and industry benefits from those scientific advances. So to do that, we're looking for the discovery of these very basic scientific advances, and we want those to lead towards revolutionary advances for the Air Force. As part of that, we look for funding primarily grants to universities and some contracts to small businesses. We typically do roughly 1,000 of those research grants a year. And we also have a considerable number, between 200 and 300 laboratory projects at the Air Force Research Laboratory to look at basic research, and then to be able to better connect that with applied research and advanced technology development at the research laboratory. Typically, we support lots of different principal investigators, 1,500 to 2,000 every year, several thousand graduate students, and hundreds of postdocs at academic institutions in the United States and some internationally as well. And again, it's also part of our job to make sure that we have a timely transition of those things, of the specific results that look very promising to the Air Force, to those that really could best benefit from it. So if you could have the next slide. The Air Force Research Laboratory is the structure that we fit under. We're one of the directorates within that. The other directorates are technology directorates that typically take the results of fundamental research and advancements in innovation and continue to develop those things for the benefit of the Air Force. So we are, Air Force Research Laboratory is also part of Air Force Material Command, who AFRL reports to. And there's also a connection of, with the Secretary of the Air Force for acquisition. Next slide, please. Air Force Research Laboratory is located at a variety of different places in the United States. We are one of those locations, obviously here in Ballston, but we also have locations overseas, and you're going to hear from the directors of those organizations as well to get a sense of what we do internationally. So we have these three offices, one in London, one in Tokyo, and one in Santiago, Chile. Next, please. Internal to the Ballston office, we are arranged into 5 technology or scientific divisions, which are listed here. Over the next 4 days, you're going to hear from the program officers in each of these 5 departments or directorates or divisions, if you'd like to call them that. So the list that you see here, which you'll have to look at in more detail on your own, constitutes the scientific and technical areas that our program managers focus on. And they'll give you a better description of what all of those things are in the next few days. So we reorganized recently over the last 2 years in order to be able to have somewhat more flexibility in these technical divisions, to be able to change areas as we need to, and to either decrease or increase the number of divisions. They're also aligned a little bit more as an academic institution might be aligned, but they're still Air Force divisions. Next slide, please. So our international offices I mentioned are in the 3 sites, London, which has roughly 18 people and is based at this RAF Blenheim Crescent. You'll hear from later today from Colonel Gresham, who runs the entire international organization, and he'll tell you a little bit about that enterprise. The Tokyo office is the Asian Office of Aerospace Research and Development, and Dr. Ma will give you a briefing about that. That has roughly 20 people, and they're on the Army base, Hardy Barracks in Tokyo. In Santiago, we have really just a few people that are based at the U.S. Embassy that cover South America. We also have an international office in Arlington. You'll hear from the director of that, Dr. Maurice, as well. They have responsibility for a variety of other things that integrate across the international enterprise. Next, please. So just to give you a sense of where the Air Force fits in terms of basic research funding overall, this of course varies from year to year as the budget is passed. Our core budget is roughly the same as the Army's budget. These orange boxes are the University Research Initiative, which includes both the Multidisciplinary University Research Initiative and the Defense University Research Instrumentation Program. There's also a segment here that we do for the Department of Defense, which is the National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Fellowship Program. And then there's a little bit there for the high energy laser program as well. Next, please. So this is why the Air Force invests in basic research. We're really trying to probe the fundamental limits of what we know in science and technology to be able to push the bounds of what the Air Force may have in terms of capabilities in the future. So we're looking for those areas that could be highly relevant to the Air Force either now or at some point in the future, 10 or 15 or 20 or even 30 years out in the future. But we also want to attract the most creative and scientific relevant minds to problems that are of direct interest to the Department of Defense. And we've done a fairly good job in being able to make those connections between those excellent people throughout the academic community in the U.S. and worldwide, and be able to connect them into primarily Air Force and other DoD interests. But we also want to try to help develop the next generation of scientists and engineers for the Air Force. So there's a piece of what we do that really includes training of the next generation. And of course, we also want to make sure that this community knows what the capabilities are in the future for the U.S. Next, please. We get inputs from a variety of different guiding documents. Many of those have come out in the past 5 years from the Air Force Chief Scientist's Office. Technology Horizons, Global Horizons, Cyber Vision, Energy Horizons, all of those documents give us a sense of what's important to the Air Force and the types of things that we should be looking at for the future. Next slide, please. So I'm going to end on this chart. I have more charts, but I'm going to end on this one so that we can try to get this a little bit back on schedule. So the Air Force Research Laboratory has instituted a series of areas that they're calling game changers in these variety of areas. Autonomy, for instance, looking at how we make decisions and control of things, I saw a recent quote from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, I think that said that we're really a far ways away from having complete autonomous vehicles if we will ever get there, but we certainly want to look at how we might be able to do that in terms of control theory. The hypersonics is also a very interesting area, looking at try to push the envelope in terms of speed of systems. We're looking at the materials behind it and the aerodynamic flow fields that are involved in that. And there's been a fair amount of progress in that over the last 10 or 15 years that ended up in a test that was done last year. In directed energy, we're looking at both issues involved in both microwave, high-power devices and laser devices, but it involves a fair amount of plasma physics research and a certain amount of energy research as well. And then in alternative navigation, we're looking at ways that we can either augment or replace the global positioning system. Many systems are dependent upon that, and we're looking at ways that where GPS is degraded or even denied in certain environments because of either terrain or active denial on the part of adversaries. We're looking at other methods where we can actually navigate. Fuel, of course, is always a big issue in the Air Force. The Air Force uses lots of hydrocarbon propellants to fly airplanes and other things. So greater fuel efficiency is also something that we're looking at. And last, we have a certain amount of interest in being able to understand how to use large amounts of data. So we have various programs to do that. So with that, I am going to actually stop. It's been a very brief overview. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Mattson, who will give you a little bit more about this, and then we'll continue on with the day. So, okay.
I'd like to add my welcome also to Dr. Carrick. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for your patience on a snow day. I've been here 2 years now, and both years we've had a snow day during the spring review, so I haven't decided whether I should